Alright, let's break down the push technique. The first type is the short push. This is effective against opponents who like to use a big, full swing loop from further back. Second is the fast push. You want to prioritize speed, even with a bit less spin. Avoid adding too much spin, as heavy backspin will naturally slow the ball down. The fast push is designed to counter players with poor brushing technique or slow reactions. They fear pace because they simply can't react in time. The third type is the heavy backspin push, ideal for opponents who hit flat and rely on power more than spin. Fourth is the no-spin push. Use this against players who lift their arm for a heavy brush loop. The more backspin you give them, the spinnier their returning loop will be, making your defense difficult. If you give them no spin, their own spin generation is weakened. Combined with their tendency to use a big, powerful swing, they'll often hit the ball long. Contact the ball with the center of your racket and push it forward, without adding spin. This way, the ball won't have much spin on it. The fifth type is the slow, floating push. This works well against players who rush the ball, use a big loop, or have slow footwork. For impatient opponents, send them a slow, floating push, almost like a chop. By slowing the ball down and making it float, you'll make it very difficult for them to time their shot. You must first master all 5 of these pushes. Then, based on your opponent, you need to play and adapt, observing their weaknesses as you go. For example, if your opponent's backhand loop has no backswing, you should push with heavy spin. Everyone's forehand and backhand habits are different. So, for this type of stroke, push with heavy spin to make them fail to brush the ball properly due to their compact swing. Many players have a short backhand swing but a large forehand swing. Against players with a large, powerful loop and a big swing, you must push the ball fast. A fast push will jam them, leaving no time for their full swing, which forces an error. Now, for an opponent with excellent backhand brushing technique, you should float the ball with no spin. This prevents them from using your spin, making their shot less effective and prone to going long. If their forehand relies on powerful, flat hits, give them a heavy backspin push to make it difficult to attack. Sometimes, players who can only push with heavy spin fall right into their opponent's trap. If the opponent is great at looping backspin, your spinny push just feeds their strength. Players who like to attack early will pounce on any slow, soft, high push. You're just setting them up for a perfect smash. In that situation, your priority must be heavy backspin. This drastically reduces their chances of smashing the ball effectively. You must analyze your opponent's patterns, their forehand, backhand, middle placement, high balls, serve and attack, receive, and forehand pivots. Once you see the patterns, you can apply the right strategy. First, let's detail the short push. This is only for short or half-long balls, it's not effective against deep serves. The key to a good short push is to push sideways. If you push straight forward, the ball is likely to go long. By pushing sideways and brushing the side of the ball, you can keep it short. A push like this has very little forward momentum. On the forehand, push to the side, always contacting the ball on the rise. Pushing sideways gives you control. Pushing straight often results in a high ball or an error. Second, the fast push. To get speed, you must use the pace from your opponent's ball. My favorite way to execute a fast push is by borrowing their power. If I wait for the ball to drop, my backhand push is more likely to be an error. So, you must use the incoming speed of their serve to execute your push effectively. For both long and short balls, if you want a fast push, you have to take the ball on the rise. By taking it on the rise, you synchronize your timing with their pace. If you wait and then try to generate the pace yourself, you'll likely misread the spin and make a mistake. See how fast that is? I'm barely using any effort, I'm just redirecting the forward momentum they gave me. This method is very consistent. Trying to create the speed entirely on your own is much harder to control. A fast push primarily uses the opponent's ball speed. The longer the ball, the easier it is to redirect pace, the shorter, the harder. You can't borrow power from a soft, slow ball. So, meet the ball on the rise and use their pace to power your push. Third is heavy spin. So what's the secret to a spinny push? To generate heavy spin, you must use the tip of your racket and accelerate it at the moment of contact. That's the key. To make it spinny, your racket head must move, just like on a serve, and it must accelerate sharply right at impact. When the ball arrives, you have to get your racket head moving, and the faster it accelerates, the more spin you'll get. The frequency of this wrist action must be high. Your racket head needs to be flexible and quick. That's how you generate spin. Imagine the racket head is moving like a fishtail. If the racket head is static and you only use your forearm, it's extremely difficult to impart heavy spin. Too much force and you'll miss, too little and the push will have no spin. So remember, when pushing, use the racket head to generate spin. The faster the racket head speed, the heavier the backspin. The key to spin is that you must be able to grip or bite the incoming ball. When your opponent's serve is extremely spinny, you won't be able to bite it. Spin against spin will just send the ball into the net. So, against a very heavy backspin serve, you can only lift or guide it back. If their serve is spinny and you try to add more spin, you will hit the net every time. Therefore, you can only add heavy spin when the incoming ball has light spin or is a no-spin ball. I might push the ball a bit high, but that high ball will be loaded with backspin. That ball is very difficult to loop. My advice is when you encounter a ball with uncertain spin, always add your own spin to be safe. You can usually identify a very spinny ball. The trajectory is low and floating, and the ball speed is slow. Against that, your main goal is to guide the spin back over the net without taking risks. For balls where the spin is unclear, even if you push it high, make sure you use that sharp wrist action. This comes back to the racket head acceleration I mentioned earlier. Next is the no-spin push. For this shot, you must not add any spin. Contact the ball with the center of your racket and use a forward motion. Adjust your racket angle from open to slightly more vertical, and send it forward. There's no brushing motion, the wrist is locked. Players who lift with their arm and rely on heavy brushing hate this kind of ball. The quality of their attack will drop significantly. So, adjust your racket to be more vertical, and focus on pushing forward. Some people ask, won't it go in the net? No, it won't. A forward push can lift any amount of backspin. Even against a very heavy spin serve, it won't go in the net. The same principle applies to the forehand. Keep the racket angle more vertical and push it forward. There's no downward motion, no finger action, no acceleration, nothing. Players who love to loop against backspin really struggle with this ball. Why? Because they can't use your spin. The more spin you give them, the spinnier their loop will be. The fifth type is the slow push or the floating push. By brushing different parts of the ball, I can make it float unpredictably. If I brush here, the ball goes straight. If I brush here, it curves this way. If I brush there, it curves the other way. So how do you make it float? First, your motion must be slow. Watch, if I brush the left side of the ball, it will curve to the left. Even if I aim for his backhand, the trajectory will still be a float or curve. If I brush this way, the ball will curve to the right. The ball will arc sideways as it lands on the table. Aggressive players who rush the ball or use a big swing hate this kind of shot. They can't time it correctly and can't use their power. It might not cause a direct error, but it will absolutely neutralize the quality of their attack. The float and the slow elements must be used together. Think about a chopper's stroke. It's always a slow, floating push. You never see a fast, floating push. If you try to do it fast, you'll break your own rhythm. Think about it, every floating ball from a Pimples rubber has one common characteristic: it's slow. When the ball is slow and floating, you rush your shot and can't connect cleanly. This is what forces the error. So when you receive serve against an impatient player who uses a big swing but doesn't move their feet, use a slow, floating push. For every player, these different pushes are like basic arithmetic. They are fundamental skills you must have. Having these skills means you'll know how to handle any type of ball from any type of opponent. The 3 golden rules of pushing are: first, keep it low; second, control the placement; and third, be consistent. If you're missing your pushes, that's a fundamental problem. Low, placement, and consistency. Always prioritize consistency. No matter the quality, make sure your push lands on the table. That alone will win you a few points per match. Then, add good placement, and you'll greatly limit your opponent's attack. Finally, if you can keep the ball low, you will neutralize the effectiveness of their attack. If a push is very low, even a professional has to lift the ball up to loop it. As long as the ball is slow, you have time to find your position and prepare to defend. But if your push is high, it doesn't matter how much spin is on it, it's useless. Your opponent can use power to overcome the spin. But if you push low, they can't find a high contact point to hit through the ball.